Well, hello there, family. Welcome back to Grandma's Kitchen. We've been on quite a journey together through soul food classics, haven't we? We've made collard greens and learned that perfection isn't the point. We've made cornbread without measuring anything, trusting our hands instead of cups. We've fried chicken the Saturday night way and baked mac and cheese that started a church potluck legend. We've made sweet potato pie that saved Thanksgiving when everything went wrong. And today, we're making one of the most beloved soul food side dishes of all time, Grandma's Candied Yams. But this isn't just about cooking sweet potatoes with butter and sugar. This is about the Christmas dinner when Grandma's Candied Yams converted the biggest yam hater in our family, my Uncle Marcus, who'd spent 43 years refusing to eat sweet potatoes in any form until one bite of Grandma's Candied Yams changed his mind forever. So let me tell you about stubbornness, second chances, and how the right recipe can change someone's mind about food they swore they'd never eat. Before we start cooking, I need to tell you about my Uncle Marcus and his lifelong war against sweet potatoes. Uncle Marcus is my mama's older brother, and for as long as anyone in our family could remember, he absolutely refused to eat sweet potatoes or yams in any form. Sweet potato pie? No thank you. Sweet potato casserole? Absolutely not. Candied yams? He'd rather starve. Baked sweet potato? Not a chance. It didn't matter how they were prepared or who made them, Uncle Marcus would not eat sweet potatoes. And it wasn't just a preference, it was a whole personality trait. Uncle Marcus was proud of hating sweet potatoes. He'd announce it at every family gathering. When someone would pass him the sweet potatoes at Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner, he'd hold up his hand like he was stopping traffic and say, "No sweet potatoes for me. Haven't eaten one in my entire life, and I'm not starting now." He said it the same way every single time. It was rehearsed. It was part of his identity. Now, you're probably wondering why Uncle Marcus hated sweet potatoes so much. And there's actually a story behind it, though whether it justifies 43 years of refusing an entire category of food is debatable. When Uncle Marcus was about 5 years old, back in the early 1950s, he got really sick with a stomach bug. He was throwing up, couldn't keep anything down, just miserable. And my great-grandmother, trying to get some nutrition into him, made him eat mashed sweet potatoes because they were soft and easy to digest. But Uncle Marcus was so sick that everything tasted terrible to him, and in his 5-year-old mind, he blamed the sweet potatoes for how awful he felt. Even though the sweet potatoes had nothing to do with his illness, even though he was already sick before he ate them, he associated sweet potatoes with being sick and feeling terrible. And that association stuck for 4 decades. As he got older, people would try to reason with him. "Marcus, you were sick. It wasn't the sweet potatoes' fault." But he wouldn't listen. "I know what I know," he'd say. "Sweet potatoes make me sick, and I don't eat them." People would try to trick him, sneak sweet potatoes into other dishes, but somehow he always knew, and he'd get mad and refuse to eat whatever it was. Grandma watched this go on for years. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every Easter, every family gathering where sweet potatoes were served, Uncle Marcus would make his little speech about not eating them, and everyone else would just shrug and pass him something else. It became normal, just part of how things were. Marcus doesn't eat sweet potatoes. That's just Marcus being Marcus. But Christmas 1995, something changed. That was the year Grandma decided she'd had enough of Uncle Marcus's sweet potato boycott. She didn't announce it ahead of time. She didn't make a big deal about it. She just quietly decided that this was the year Marcus was going to eat sweet potatoes, whether he thought he wanted to or not. Now, let me show you how to make Grandma's Candied Yams, the dish that ended Uncle Marcus's 43-year streak of sweet potato resistance. We're starting with the yams themselves. Now, I know I keep calling these yams, and earlier we made sweet potato pie with sweet potatoes, and you might be confused about the difference. Here's the truth. In American grocery stores, what we call yams are actually a type of sweet potato. True yams are a different vegetable entirely, mostly found in Africa and Asia. But in soul food culture, we call the orange-fleshed sweet potatoes yams when we're making candied yams, and we call them sweet potatoes when we're making sweet potato pie, even though they're the same thing. I don't make the rules, I just follow them. I've got 6 large sweet potatoes here, which is going to make enough candied yams to feed about 10 to 12 people. You want to look for sweet potatoes that are firm, heavy for their size, with smooth skin and no soft spots or sprouting eyes. The bigger they are, the easier they are to work with, but make sure they're not so huge that they're woody in the center. Now, there are 2 schools of thought on preparing sweet potatoes for candied yams. Some people peel them raw and then cut them into chunks before cooking. Other people cook them with the skin on and then peel them afterward. Grandma did it the second way because she said cooking them with the skin on helped them hold their shape better and kept them from getting too mushy. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm scrubbing these sweet potatoes really well under running water with a vegetable brush because we're going to cook them with the skins on. I'm looking for any bad spots and cutting those off. Once they're clean, I'm going to cook them, but not all the way. This is important. You want to parboil them, which means partially cook them, so they're tender enough to peel but not so soft that they fall apart. I'm putting these whole sweet potatoes in my largest pot and covering them with cold water. I'm adding a generous pinch of salt to the water. I'm putting this on the stove over high heat and bringing it to a boil. Once it's boiling, I'm going to turn it down to medium and let them cook for about 20 to 25 minutes, depending on how big they are. You want them to be just fork tender. You should be able to pierce them with a fork, but they should still have some resistance. While those are cooking, let me tell you about Christmas morning, 1995. The whole family was gathering at Grandma's house as usual. My mama and my aunts and I arrived early to help Grandma cook. The kitchen was already warm from the oven, already smelling like ham and turkey and all the wonderful smells of Christmas dinner. Grandma had her apron on and her cooking playlist going, gospel music mixed with old school R&B, just like always. I was about 14 years old at the time, and I was helping Grandma prepare the sweet potatoes for her candied yams. We were standing at the sink together, scrubbing the sweet potatoes, when I asked her, "Grandma, why are you making candied yams? Uncle Marcus won't eat them. He never does." And Grandma looked at me with this little smile on her face and said, "He will this year." "How do you know?" I asked. "Because this year I'm making them special," she said. "I'm making them so good that Marcus won't be able to resist. And when he tastes them, he's going to realize he's been missing out on something delicious his whole life." "But Grandma," I said, "Uncle Marcus hasn't eaten sweet potatoes in 40 years. He's not going to start now just because you made them." Grandma just smiled. "Baby, you don't know what a good candied yam can do. I've converted pickier eaters than Marcus. Just watch." I didn't believe her. I thought Uncle Marcus was too stubborn, too set in his ways. But Grandma had a plan, and when Grandma had a plan, things usually worked out the way she wanted them to. My sweet potatoes have been cooking for about 25 minutes now, and they're just fork tender. I can pierce them with a fork, but they're not falling apart. I'm draining them in a colander and running cold water over them to stop the cooking process. This also makes them cool enough to handle. Now comes the somewhat tedious part, but it's worth it. Once the sweet potatoes are cool enough to touch, I'm going to peel them. The skins should slip off pretty easily now that they're cooked. I'm using my hands and a paring knife for any stubborn spots. See how the skin just slides right off? That's what we want. Once they're peeled, I'm cutting them into slices about 1/2 inch thick. Some people cut them into chunks or cubes, and that's fine too. Grandma preferred slices because she said they looked prettier in the baking dish and they absorbed the syrup better. I'm trying to make the slices relatively uniform in thickness so they cook evenly in the oven. Look at these beautiful orange slices. This is about 6 cups of sliced sweet potatoes, which is exactly what we need. Now I'm going to layer them in my baking dish. I'm using a 9x13-inch baking dish, and I'm arranging these sweet potato slices in overlapping layers, kind of like shingles on a roof. You don't have to be too precise about it, but try to make it relatively even. Now we're going to make the syrup that transforms these ordinary cooked sweet potatoes into candied yams. This is where the magic happens, where Grandma's special technique comes in. In a medium saucepan, I'm combining 1 cup of brown sugar, packed brown sugar, not loose. I'm using dark brown sugar because it has more molasses flavor, but light brown sugar works too. I'm adding 1/2 cup of granulated white sugar to the brown sugar. Now for the butter. A whole stick of butter, 8 tablespoons, cut into pieces. This is not the time to use margarine or try to cut calories. Real butter is what makes this dish special. I'm adding the butter pieces to the sugar. Now I'm adding 1/2 cup of water. Some people use orange juice instead of water, and that's a nice variation if you want a citrus note. I'm also adding 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. The salt is important. It balances the sweetness and makes all the other flavors pop. I'm putting this saucepan over medium heat and stirring constantly until the butter melts and the sugar dissolves completely. This takes about 5 to 7 minutes. You want to stir it continuously so the sugar doesn't burn on the bottom of the pan. See how it's starting to bubble and get syrupy? That's what we want. The mixture should be smooth and glossy with no sugar granules remaining. On that Christmas morning, I watched Grandma make her syrup, and she did something I'd never seen her do before. She tasted it, thought for a moment, and then she added a secret ingredient. She went to the cabinet and pulled out a small bottle of bourbon. "Grandma," I said, shocked, "you're putting alcohol in the candied yams?" She gave me a look. "It's not alcohol by the time it's done cooking, baby. The alcohol burns off in the oven. What's left is just flavor, a little depth, a little warmth, something that makes people say, 'What is that flavor? I can't quite identify.' That's what's going to get Marcus." She added about 2 tablespoons of bourbon to her syrup, stirred it in, and tasted it again. "Perfect," she said with satisfaction. Now, I'm not adding bourbon to mine today because I want to show you the classic version, but if you want to try Grandma's secret weapon, add about 2 tablespoons of bourbon or dark rum to your syrup after it's melted and smooth. It really does add a special something. My syrup is perfectly smooth and bubbling gently. I'm pouring this hot syrup over my layered sweet potato slices, making sure to distribute it evenly over the whole dish. Tilt the pan gently to help the syrup flow between the layers and coat everything. See how that syrup seeps down between the slices, getting into all the crevices? Beautiful. Now I'm dotting the top with a little extra butter, about 2 more tablespoons, cut into small pieces and scattered over the surface. This will help create a beautiful glaze on top as it bakes. I'm covering this dish tightly with aluminum foil. This is going into a preheated 350-degree oven for 45 minutes covered. Then I'm going to uncover it and bake for another 30 to 45 minutes uncovered, basting every 15 minutes with the syrup that bubbles up. This gradual basted cooking process is what creates that thick, glossy, candy-like coating that gives candied yams their name. While this first batch is baking, let me tell you what happened as Christmas dinner approached. Grandma's candied yams were in the oven, filling the whole house with the most incredible smell: cinnamon, butter, caramelized sugar, sweet potatoes, all mingling together. Everyone kept walking by the kitchen asking when dinner would be ready because the smell was driving them crazy. Uncle Marcus arrived around noon with his wife and kids. He came into the kitchen to say hello to Grandma, and I saw him stop and sniff the air. "Something smells good in here, Mama," he said. "What's that smell?" "That's my candied yams, baby," Grandma said casually. She wasn't plotting anything at all. Uncle Marcus smiled. "Well, they smell good. Too bad I don't eat sweet potatoes." There it was, the automatic response, said out of habit more than anything else. Grandma just smiled and went back to her cooking, but I saw the determined look in her eyes. She was going to get him to try those yams if it was the last thing she did. Dinner time came. The dining room table was absolutely loaded with food. Ham, turkey, dressing, greens, mac and cheese, green beans, rolls, cranberry sauce, every traditional soul food Christmas dish you can imagine. And right in the middle of the table, in Grandma's prettiest serving dish, were those candied yams, glistening and gorgeous, with a syrup so thick and shiny it looked like liquid gold. Everyone sat down. The blessing was said, and then people started passing dishes and loading up their plates. The candied yams came around the table, person after person taking a generous scoop, commenting on how beautiful they looked, how good they smelled. The dish reached Uncle Marcus, and just like clockwork, he held up his hand in his usual gesture. "No sweet potatoes for me," he started to say, but Grandma interrupted him. "Marcus," she said, and her voice was firm but loving. "You're 48 years old. Don't you think it's time to get over something that happened when you were 5? Uncle Marcus looked surprised. Grandma rarely challenged him directly about the sweet potato thing. Most of the time, she just let him do his thing and didn't make a fuss. "Mama, you know I don't eat sweet potatoes," he said. "I know you think you don't eat sweet potatoes," Grandma corrected him, "but that's based on a bad experience you had when you were practically a baby. You've never actually tasted well-prepared sweet potatoes, Marcus. You've never given them a real chance." The whole table had gone quiet. Everyone was watching this exchange. This was unprecedented. "I know what I like and what I don't like," Uncle Marcus said, but his voice was less certain than usual. Grandma stood up, walked over to where Uncle Marcus was sitting, and scooped a small portion of candied yams onto his plate before he could stop her. "That's the problem," she said gently. "You don't know what you like because you've never tried it. You're going to taste one bite of these candied yams. Just one bite. If you hate it, fine. You never have to eat sweet potatoes again, and I'll never bring it up. But you're going to taste one bite of food that I made with love for this family. That's all I'm asking." The table was absolutely silent. Uncle Marcus looked down at the small scoop of candied yams on his plate. Then he looked up at Grandma, then back down at his plate. "My candied yams have been baking covered for 45 minutes. I'm taking off the foil now and look at how they've absorbed some of that syrup and softened even more. The sweet potatoes are tender and the syrup is bubbling around them. Now comes the best part, the basting process. I'm using a spoon to scoop up some of that syrupy liquid from the bottom of the pan, and I'm drizzling it over the top of the sweet potatoes. This basting process is crucial. It's what creates that thick, glossy coating and allows the flavors to intensify. I'm putting this back in the oven uncovered for 15 minutes, then I'll baste it again. Over the next 30 to 45 minutes, I'm going to baste these yams every 15 minutes. Each time, the syrup will get thicker and stickier as the water evaporates and the sugar concentrates. By the end, you'll have this gorgeous candy-like glaze coating every slice of sweet potato. Back at that Christmas dinner table, everyone was watching Uncle Marcus. He was staring at the candied yams on his plate like they might bite him. Finally, he picked up his fork. He cut off a small piece, and I mean small, barely the size of a pea. He looked at it on his fork. He looked at Grandma. He looked back at the fork. "It's not going to kill you, Marcus," Grandma said dryly. Uncle Marcus put the fork in his mouth. And then everything changed. His expression shifted from skeptical to surprised to thoughtful to something like amazement. He chewed slowly, swallowed, and sat there in silence for a moment. "Well?" Grandma asked. Uncle Marcus looked at her with the most bewildered expression I've ever seen on an adult's face. "That's actually really good," he said. And he sounded shocked by his own words. The entire table erupted. People started laughing, cheering, clapping. Uncle Marcus's wife was laughing so hard she had tears in her eyes. His kids were making fun of him good-naturedly, and Grandma just sat there with this satisfied smile on her face. She just won a bet she knew she'd win all along. "Can I have some more?" Uncle Marcus asked, still sounding amazed. "Help yourself, baby," Grandma said. "There's plenty." Uncle Marcus took another scoop, then another. By the end of that dinner, he'd eaten more candied yams than anyone else at the table. He kept saying things like, "I can't believe I've been missing out on this my whole life, and why didn't anyone tell me they could taste like this?" I'm on my third basting now. Look at how thick and glossy this syrup has become. It's coating the sweet potatoes beautifully, and the edges are starting to caramelize and get slightly crispy. The whole kitchen smells absolutely incredible. That combination of caramelized sugar, butter, cinnamon, and sweet potatoes is just heavenly. One more basting session, and these will be perfect. The sweet potatoes should be very tender, almost melt in your mouth, and the syrup should be thick enough to coat a spoon. Some of the edges might be slightly candied and crispy, which is actually desirable. Those caramelized edges are the best part. After that Christmas dinner, Uncle Marcus became a candied yam convert. He asked Grandma for the recipe, though he admitted his never turned out quite as good as hers. Every subsequent holiday, he'd ask specifically if someone was making candied yams, and he'd always take a large portion. He became almost evangelical about it, telling people, "You've got to try these candied yams, they're incredible." A few years later, at another Christmas dinner, someone new to the family made the mistake of saying they didn't like sweet potatoes. Uncle Marcus almost leaped across the table. "You just haven't had them made right," he insisted. "I used to say the same thing, but then my mama made these candied yams and changed my whole perspective. You've got to at least try them." The rest of us thought this was hilarious, watching Uncle Marcus enthusiastically pushing sweet potatoes on someone else after he'd spent 40+ years refusing them himself. But it also warmed our hearts. It was a reminder that people can change, that it's never too late to try something new, that stubbornness can be overcome with the right approach. Grandma would just smile and say, "Sometimes people just need to be fed the right food made the right way. That's all it takes." My candied yams are done now. I'm taking them out of the oven for the final time. Look at this. The sweet potatoes are tender and glazed. The syrup has thickened into this gorgeous coating. Some of the edges are slightly caramelized and crispy. This is perfection. I'm letting this cool for about 10 to 15 minutes before serving. The syrup will thicken even more as it cools, creating that candy-like consistency that gives this dish its name. Some people like to top theirs with mini marshmallows for the last few minutes of baking, and that's a nice touch if you want it sweeter and more like a casserole. But Grandma never used marshmallows. She said the sweet potatoes were sweet enough on their own. Let me scoop some of this onto a plate so you can see the texture. Look at how tender these sweet potato slices are, how that syrup clings to them and coats them completely. See that glossy sheen? That's what you're looking for. And when you taste it, the sweetness from the sugar, the richness from the butter, the warmth from the cinnamon and nutmeg, and that perfectly tender sweet potato that just melts in your mouth. This is why Uncle Marcus gave up his 43-year boycott. This is what I wanted to share with you today. Not just a recipe for candied yams, though I hope you'll make these and they'll become a tradition in your family, but also the story of Uncle Marcus and Grandma and what it teaches us about stubbornness and being willing to change our minds. Uncle Marcus spent 43 years refusing to eat sweet potatoes because of one bad experience when he was 5 years old. Think about that. How many other things do we refuse to try or refuse to reconsider because of one bad experience or one wrong impression? How many opportunities for joy or deliciousness or new experiences do we miss out on because we're stuck in old patterns and old beliefs? Grandma taught me that it's never too late to change your mind about something. It's never too late to try something new or give something a second chance. Yes, Uncle Marcus looked a little foolish admitting he'd been wrong all those years. But you know what? He had the courage to try something he'd been avoiding, and he was rewarded with discovering something he loved. And Grandma taught me about persistence and creativity in the kitchen. She didn't argue with Uncle Marcus year after year, trying to logic him into eating sweet potatoes. She just made the best possible version of the dish and created an environment where he felt safe enough to try it. She used love and skill instead of pressure and argument. Thank you for being here with me in Grandma's kitchen today. Thank you for letting me teach you how to make candied yams and for letting me share the story of Uncle Marcus and his sweet potato conversion. I hope you'll make these for your family. I hope they'll love them as much as Uncle Marcus learned to love them. And I hope you'll remember that it's okay to change your mind, okay to try new things, okay to admit you were wrong about something. Next time in Grandma's Kitchen, we'll make another soul food classic and I'll share another story about family and food and the lessons we learn around the table. Until then, take care. Make some candied yams. Be willing to try things you think you don't like. And remember, Uncle Marcus, it's never too late to discover something wonderful. God bless you, family. I'll see you next time.